Hey everybody, Yankee here. It appears that one of our purely American gun manufacturers is going out of business. SCCY Arms is now defunct. Now you might be asking yourself, why should I care about this? Well, I think there's a very good reason you should care, and we'll talk about that in a second. Hey everybody, Yankee here. If you're like me and you watch the Firearm Guys channel, and I'm sure a lot of you do, he's a very interesting guy. I like him because he's like a more likable version of me who's maybe had one or two more head injuries. And I've had several head injuries, so that might tell you a little something. But like I said, I watch his channel, and if you watch his channel, you probably know SCCY Firearms is now out of business. They are defunct. They were riddled with debt. You know, they were just buried in it, and they're not going to be coming back. The county has seized all their property, and they will not be reopening their doors. All their employees are laid off. Product is discontinued, and that is bad for a lot of different reasons. But there's one reason why I think a lot of people should care. And I know a lot of people right now probably don't care because they're like, I don't even know what this gun is. And if you're not familiar, it's SCCY. They make a small little pistol that's affordable, easy to carry. And they were trying to break into that budget, easy carried gun niche. Unfortunately, there's a lot of competition in that market. A lot of manufacturers are trying to get into that market, and even the big manufacturers are producing, more budget-friendly guns these days and smaller guns these days, so it makes it really hard for a company like SCCY to get a foothold. They even had some hiccups right off the bat because in the beginning they were spelled SKKY, or it might have been SKYY, but I know it was either the same as or very close to the vodka, so they had to change it to SCCY, so that's how we know them now, or at least that's how we knew them. They are gone. Looking at their financials, it's hard to tell what happened. Was it mismanagement or what? Doesn't seem like it. It seems to me like their prices just steamrolled, just skyrocketed. If you look at what their monthly bill was, for their county and state and all this other stuff, like what the expenditures were, it just from like 2022 to 2024 went up like 50 times. Not 50%, like 50 times. So it just got outrageous. It was even more than that, I think. So it looks like costs just ballooned on them. I don't know if maybe some deals they had with the state or the county up front expired, or maybe just prices on everything went up that high. Maybe new regulations went into effect where they were at, and it started costing them a lot more. That's one of the reasons I think people should care. Not so much because it's another gun company that's not out there anymore. That happens every now and then, and that is sad. Especially in this case, because this was a purely American company in Florida. They were an American company with American employees making an American product, blah, 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 and that's bad to see them go. But also, this whole notion that it might have just been spiraling costs that put them out of business, and when you make a budget gun, a little budget gun, you can't just say, wow, due to regulations and pricing and, tariffs and whatever, we can't just start charging twice as much for this gun, even though now, because of those things, it's costing us twice as much to make it. Because people wouldn't buy it. They're still trying to break into the market, still trying to make a name for themselves. And like I said, competing with a lot of other companies trying to do the same thing, and competing with even bigger manufacturers, a lot of them from overseas, that can produce guns like that at a loss just to keep their name brand around. They're competing with that, and that makes it very hard. So they're gone. And one of the reasons I think people should care about this, other than just, another American company going under, is because that's been a goal of the Bloomberg groups, been a goal of the Democrats for a while now. They've said, well, we're not being very successful taking away individual rights because that's all getting overturned in the court slowly. So we need to go after retailers and manufacturers. So they've been increasing fees. They've been adding extra scrutiny. They've been requiring stuff like, oh, now if you sell a gun, you got to have security systems that, keep a year's worth of data on hand at all times, including voice and all kinds of crazy laws they've been passing just to put more expenses on retailers, distributors, and manufacturers. And it looks like SCCY Arms might have been a victim of one of these schemes, of this market. And I don't like that. That means the people like Bloomberg are winning. The people like Giffords are winning. Remember, there's a lot of money in being anti-gun. There's some money in being pro-gun. If you want to go work for one of the big pro-gun groups, that's where most of the money comes from there. But being anti-gun, well, there's billionaires all over the country, Republican and Democrat both, who want you disarmed because you armed means that there's a challenge to their power, that they can't maintain absolute control being just 1% of the population if the other 99% is armed. So they need to get rid of that. And this could just be an example of how that's actually working. They're actually being able to force these companies out of business, especially American-made companies. Because if they can get American-made companies out of business or sold off to overseas interest and then make it so expensive to bring products in that they don't even bother because no one would be able to afford them, well, they can really put a damper on your Second Amendment rights. That's one of the things I don't like about tariffs in an industry where a lot of the companies are now being owned by overseas interests. It's even Colt now is owned by CZ. You know, you don't know what companies are American and what ones aren't. Even if it's an American company, do they make their guns here? Do they just assemble their guns here? Sky was one that did everything here. As far as I know, everything they did was in-house. At least that's how they advertised it. So that is a loss. And that is something, like I said, the Bloomberg people, they want to do. They would love to be able to do that to all the manufacturers. They would love to see all the manufacturers get bought out by overseas interests. They would love to see production move overseas. And then they can just block them from coming in. And make it even look like it's the other company's fault. If they wanted to, they control the media. So that's why I think this is so disheartening. Not only because they're an American company, because I think it's part of the plan. I've been saying for a long time, their plan, since they can't say, we're taking away your Second Amendment rights, they're just taking away the source. They're trying to go after the retailers, the distributors, the manufacturers. And a lot of smaller manufacturers have been driven out by licensing costs and insurance costs and all this other stuff, because it's been skyrocketing for a lot of these companies. And a lot of the companies are like, the market inside the United States is getting so competitive that it's hard to be competitive and still make a profit. And if tariffs and stuff start coming in, well, then those manufacturers are not going to be able to be competitive in this market at all. Only the guns made here will be the ones that we can actually afford to buy. And if they start regulating them out of existence, well, then we're screwed. If it's too expensive to bring them in from overseas and it's too expensive to make them here because of regulations, etc., that's a real damper on our Second Amendment rights. Doesn't matter what rights you have if you can't exercise them. If you have a right to own whatever gun you can buy, but every gun is like $12,000, well, then only people that are going to have guns are the super wealthy and the high-end people. I'm definitely not high-end. I am not even, I don't think, middle of the barrel. I'm drifting down towards the bottom as I'm getting older. So people like me would not be able to afford. We might be able to have one gun, you know, as a necessity. And I think that's where we're going in this country. And I don't like that. And I think this, even though this isn't a huge tragedy in itself, I think it's a symptom of a much bigger issue. And right now, I think the people on the left, the Democrats, the billionaires, the 1% right or left that run the country, are actually winning when it comes to taking guns out of your hands, not through laws, not through denying you rights, but just taking away the product and your ability to actually afford it and own it.